Welcome to Love Local, the podcast by Jennifer Cornish Design, where we spotlight the incredible independent businesses in Newbury and the surrounding areas. I'm your host, Jen, and each episode I'll be chatting with a local business owner to hear their story, how they started, the challenges they faced, and the creative and marketing decisions that helped them grow. Welcome to Love Local. This week we're joined by Laura from
Laura Fishlock Osteopathy.
Yeah, we've just done about 20 takes because for some reason I can't get those words out my mouth. Thank you for joining us today. Shall we start with you telling me a bit about your business, how you started and your journey?
So when I qualified from uni, osteopathy was very different to what it's like now. The options were very much be self-employed and work for someone else or set up your own business. So back then I made the decision that I'd gain a bit of experience being an associate working in someone else's clinic, but the way that my practice had evolved and the ethos in other people's clinics wasn't fitting with the way that I practiced. So slowly over time I went from being an associate and then setting up my own thing, growing that on the side and slowly weaning down the hours I was working for other people. I think some of it was a journey and a big learning curve. We did a little bit of business at uni, learning how to make a business plan to go to the bank to get a loan, but never really the true runnings behind the scene of a business, how to run a clinic, none of that from undergraduate level. So I've had to find my way as I've gone along, and slowly but surely we've built up to where we are. When I set up as a sole trader and had my own setup, I was actually based in Thatcham, and then slowly moved as different things happen around room rates and trying to make business as cost effective as possible. So moved then to Newbury. COVID then happened.
Yeah.
Had set up my clinic then after COVID in Hungerford, while still room renting in Newbury. But the journey in COVID really, I guess, catapulted my business because it made me make those hard decisions about associating and the work I was doing for other people and really focus into my business and where I should be putting my time. So I started then really focusing on what I wanted my message to be, what fitted with the way I worked, how I could then attract the clients that I wanted to work with. That doesn't mean I'm specific about seeing people who don't fit my specialist interests, because we work with aches and pains all over the body, and help a wide range of people from newborns all the way through to your 100-plus-year-old. So we have a really diverse span of skills, but it really did change things. And then Hungerford took off, and that was just me with the setup I have there, so 2-room clinic. And over time, the way that my business was going in Newbury, I was in a position where I'd sort of just hit my ceiling and needed to build a team, grow the business, but was very much holding on to not doing it because of the fear of that next step, imposter syndrome, all those things. Found out I was pregnant. Wow. And then realised, oops, how do I keep earning as a sole trader? So then I expanded the team, came back from that maternity leave with 2 locum osteopaths that are still with me now. So they joined me back in 2023 and have continued on this journey with me. Then we opened Newbury at the end of 2023 when I was due to come back to work, so that we could all work, keep seeing the clients they'd onboarded that liked the way they worked, and I could come back and see the clients that I had that wanted to come back to see me, but also grow a new list. It definitely changed the business and has changed my journey as we sort of moved on. Getting into osteopathy was an interesting one as well because I thought I was going to do physiotherapy.
Okay.
But the journey that observing in other people's clinic, getting a sense of where physio fitted within the healthcare system compared to osteopathy and where I saw myself going as a practitioner was part of, I think, the starting point of that professional journey, and personal growth along the way.
So how does that work then? So like with your training, was it at that point that you decided to go into osteopathy or what point?
Before, when I was looking at university options, I had to make the decision whether I wanted to do an physio degree that's funded tuition fee wise by the NHS, so there's definitely perks there, from a financial like tuition fee perspective, for student finance, and then verse that against osteopathy and other healthcare options that were in the picture, because I'd done this bit of observation in a alternative therapy clinic. And from that, the way that osteopathy just fitted the way I saw my healthcare journey going, and from experience of family members having osteopathy and the difference that made versus having physiotherapy for their different aches and ailments, it sort of shaped that journey. Then went to my open day and had my interview, fell in love with the location because it was more me than a campus university. It was an old manor house, lots of outdoor space, and that's when the decision was pretty much made.
Amazing. So for people that might not know the difference between physiotherapy and osteopathy, did you want to just give a bit of a brief outline?
So osteopathy is very holistic. So when we see someone for, say, neck pain, we're looking for the root cause. We're seeking health within the body, but we're looking for the root cause of your problem. And that might not be in your neck. You might wake up with a crick in your neck, but you could have sprained your ankle or broke your ankle decades ago, and the body be compensating differently. So when you see us, we assess the full body, and we'll be looking at those imbalances, and we will treat the full body accordingly to what's going on. Often when we see clients that have been for physiotherapy, it's slightly different between NHS physio and private physio. Some of it's time constraints, some of it's what's allowed within the setup that healthcare's sort of taken there. So with physio, we see a lot of people that are given prescriptive exercises. If in the private setting that's more similar to osteo, you'll be assessed, you might have some hands-on treatment, may have some taping, and then your rehab exercises, but it's much more focused around functional movement and getting you back moving. Osteopathy, we help people get more mobile, we reduce pain, but we also look at things like headaches and migraines, which don't necessarily have movement function focus. We also look at things like the way something organ related may impact the physical structure of the body, and can treat visceral osteopathy wise. So that varies, and integrating all of that back together in the bigger picture. We give exercises like a physio, we do soft tissue work like a physio would. It sits sort of similar. The way I work, you've probably got chiropractic one end of the spectrum and a physio the other end, and I sit sort of in the middle. We'll do joint manipulations and adjustments like a chiropractor, but we give the rehab advice and do the stretching and the soft tissue work more physio based. And I guess that's sort of what makes us more unique to seeing a different osteopath. So it's changed a lot, the scope of practice, and evolved over the years.
Amazing. So you talked about kind of when you got into the industry before you set up your business. What kind of period of time was that when you were working for someone else? How long did that take you to kind of realise, actually, I want to do this on my own? Like, how long would you recommend people kind of going and working for someone else before they kind of make that jump?
So for me, I qualified in the summer of 2017. So I would have finished my degree, had my graduation at the start of July. I then had a couple of months looking for jobs to be an associate, but in the back of my mind I was planning what else I was going to do. So the way it works is you have your own professional indemnity insurance even if you are a sole trader contracted into another clinic. So I was free to doing work for myself. So I had treated a few family friends, but nothing major as a sole trader doing my own thing. In the October, I then started my associate position in Camberley, and I stayed there until the start of 2019. I'd taken on a Newbury associate position as well, reduced hours because the bulk of my hours were in Camberley doing 3 days a week, but I did a little bit in Newbury for a couple of half days. It then came to February 2018. So I hadn't even really been out of uni 6 months working, and I was like, no, I'm ready. And that's when I took my room in Thatcham, and I was like, I'm definitely ready. I need more work, and more work that fits the identity that I'm building, resonates with the way I want to work, and means I can empower myself to take control and ownership of what I'm doing business wise. And so I sort of forced myself. So I started ad hoc room renting, which at the time I didn't have loads of money to throw into a clinic. I just needed somewhere that was convenient, that I could ad hoc book. I could book people in and make it work and start something from the ground up. And that's what we did. I stayed there for about a year, and then changed where I was working because of the way it sort of fit from a ad hoc renting perspective. As I got busier, the ad hoc renting gets more difficult.
Yeah.
So I had to find somewhere that I could then room rent, which probably took me about a year. I was still doing all my associate work, but then we got to the point that I needed to put more hours into what I was doing.
Yeah. And is the ad hoc renting, is that quite a common thing within the industry to do?
It varies. Back when I started renting, it was quite common in multidisciplinary clinics, so clinics that have lots of different healthcare therapies under one roof.
Yeah.
It can be quite common for ad hoc room renting. It doesn't always work for the individual therapist, because if you want your space to be able to store stuff on site or book as and when it suits your calendar, it doesn't always match up. So I was having to ad hoc room book and try and fill it, or cancel the ad hoc booking within the time frame and things like that. So it's a juggling act, and it got to the point that I couldn't ad hoc book and have like a block booking of a set time. I'd have to ad hoc one person, someone else would then use the room, then I'd have to go back and ad hoc someone else later. So that's when it got to the point where it was more of a logistical nightmare. So then I found somewhere I could just room rent for a set period, which worked much better. I had exclusive use for the days that I wanted to use the room, and I could store stuff on site more easily, which helped. That was...
Do you look back now and think, God, how did I manage that?
Part of it, yes. I think it's a learning curve, and if I was starting out again, I'd do things differently.
How would you?
How would I do that? I think if I was starting out again, I'd take the leap first, like much earlier. I wouldn't build up and wait until my business, I guess, from a tracking what was working perspective, be it a financially viable point. I think I'd look at other ways of committing to like a lease and having that space to expand into much sooner. With
it's all learning, isn't it? Because it's hard. I always say to people now, just if you don't like your job, just quit and do something for yourself. But they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get the clients. But the clients come. They do. And you expand. It's about how much work you put into it, really. And if it doesn't work, just go and get another job. You can't be unhappy in your current job. So it's hard though, isn't it? Because obviously when you're starting out, that's a big financial commitment to kind of rent a place if you don't think you've got the client base
or have the financial backing. Because I just come straight out of uni, I didn't have the financial backing to put loads of money into something, which is where the associate work came into play, because it meant I could earn and have money as a safety net to start doing the ad hoc bit and then build up. It's also hard as well, because it's not so much, because healthcare isn't so much about having that client base, because it will come over time, but it's about not feeling like an imposter within the settings. You've just come out of uni and you've got other therapists locally that have decades of experience on you, and being able to sort of put that name, your name out there, and get the audience that you want to target with little experience is quite daunting. And getting to the point that you've got the confidence in yourself to say, no, actually what I'm doing is worthwhile, but at the expense of giving up those associate positions and the clients you're helping there. It's hard, because you don't want to let those people down, because you're supporting them with their healthcare journey.
And I'm guessing as well, you can't pinch those clients like that.
No.
And how was that kind of transition from you going across and kind of having those conversations to be like, I'm going to do this on my own now? How was that? So
it's a difficult one. I had clients who said they're an osteopath like a hairdresser. Once you found a good one, even though you can't directly poach the clients, you can find your osteopath. If they leave, you know their name, you can put it in Google, you can then find where they've relocated to. And if you found a good one, you're likely go. But you can't directly say, look, I'm leaving. This is where I'm going. They know you're going, but you can't tell them where you're going. So that was an interesting one. You will always have clients that follow because they like the way that you've been treating them and the way you help them. They will always follow. But there's other clients that then get relocated onto other clinic lists with other practitioners, and that's the way it works. In that the healthcare industry, I had quite a lot of clients eventually find me, to the extent when I left Camberley, where one of my associate positions was, I was going out to Aldershot to do a home visit because they found my business card.
Oh, wow.
From when I worked at Camberley, they found my business card and they were like, oh, that's who we used to see.
Yeah.
Put me in Google and realised they could then contact me direct.
Wow.
But it'd been in a filing cabinet for the best part of 2 years since I'd finished working in Camberley.
But that's a sign of a good service, isn't it, really? In that 2 years later, someone still wants to go directly to that person.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's really hard. And it's hard, I think, with leaving an associate position, leaving those clients that you've built that trust, you've built that professional relationship with, and suddenly you feel like you're abandoning them on their journey. That bit's the hardest. It was nice when you're leaving people in a position where you've made all that difference and they're really at a point where they can go out, fend for themselves, do your advice, and they're not going to destabilise. But anyone that I'd onboarded before leaving that was acute and they still needed that support in clinic, and you can make a difference, but you're not going to be there. They're the ones that you almost worry about. You don't need to worry because someone else is going to take over, but you worry about their next steps and what they're going to be doing.
And then, so when you were starting out, what would you say one of the biggest challenges you faced was? Because obviously you have talked about a few, but if you could pinpoint one, what would that be?
I think the one thing that I found hardest starting out is the lack of knowledge around business. So we had business, like I said, in our undergraduate degree, we did have a module, but because that was so focused on a business plan and how to get a loan from the bank, that doesn't fit everyone's setup. And how do you then run a clinic? How do you manage your finances? How do you track your performance? What is the way that you actually go about running the day in, day out of a business? At uni, you learn how to go through a consultation. They teach you how to do a case history, how to assess a client, how to reach a diagnostic findings report, how to treat them, how to give advice, when they should return. And even that, to some degree, you have to learn along the way. But with that, you don't know how to actually run the behind the scenes of the clinic.
Yeah, and it sounds quite odd that university were teaching you how to get a loan straight off the back. That sounds quite, not negative, but why would that be? Like, what would you, is it equipment that you would need that loan for? Like, what would it be?
Because of how osteopathy was at the time when I qualified, it was very much private healthcare. You were in that complementary healthcare setting, and for many osteopaths, I was in the minority, being a first-time university student, qualifying first career. Most osteopaths are second and third career osteopaths.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they often come into the industry from the corporate world, and they then have decided that they don't want to work for someone. They want to just set up on their own. They might have had a family, and they want something that they can run alongside having children.
Like corporate doing something completely different.
Completely.
Oh,
and
wow, okay.
With that, being at home, working from home, and how do you get a loan to buy a treatment table? How do you get a loan to maybe lease and prove that you've got a business that is going to sustain paying for that lease, and get a loan from the bank to fund things like that? So it is interesting, but they teach you how to do this really good standard business plan that a bank would accept, but you don't know how to run a clinic.
Okay, that is quite interesting to see.
It's fine as a sole trader because you've not got to manage people, and you've just got to manage the things that you're doing day in, day out, but not the bigger picture of what you do when you've got to manage a team.
Exactly. So if we talk about branding and marketing, how have you gone along that journey? How have you found it, evolving your brand along the years?
So from a pictorial perspective, my brand's changed a lot over my time as an osteopath. When I started out, I had nothing really to invest in branding, so I had a nice $5 logo, as most people do. It was really clean. It was just black text on a white background, and I bought a few branded t-shirts to work in because I decided I didn't want to wear clinic coats that we had at uni. I want my practice, when I first qualified, I went into sports osteopathy as a postgraduate qualification, so I wanted to be more comfortable in work, so I chose polo shirts, and then over time, at the probably end of 2020, I felt like I'd outgrown the simplicity of my logo. I felt that my brand and who I was as a practitioner had evolved so much in the sort of 3.5 years that I'd been out of uni that we were ready for a refresh.
Yeah, and that's common. I see that a lot with people kind of just having something really standard to start because they don't really know what they're going to be, and then give it a good 3 years. They're like, actually, I know the tone, I know my tone of voice, I know the clients I want to service, so it's time for a refresh. Yeah.
And for that, I outsourced and actually invested in a graphic design company that did all my logo design, colour scheme. They were really, really good at bringing together colours that I didn't even realise were me.
Yeah.
And that's the logos I have now. And we worked on it for a while because where I had Newbury, Hungerford, and at the time I did a room rent in Hurstbourne Tarrant, I actually had 3 different coloured logos, but they all sat within one bigger colour scheme, which really worked for where I was going. And we still have that same branding now.
You have to think about that as well. I always say to people, if they're doing a logo, it has to have longevity, and if the owner wants to expand, think about that. If the owner has different locations, think about that. Like, how can you change it for the different locations? How can you expand it so that the brand lasts 10 years? Because what people sometimes forget about is if you rebrand, that costs a lot of money. It's not just the logo costing, it's the clothing, the signage, the business cards, the marketing, everything like that. It's not just as simple as, oh, I'm just going to change the logo. It goes across everything, especially if you've expanded. That's a big outlay to have if you suddenly go, oh, actually, I'm not too sure on the logo I have. So I always encourage people, look ahead. What do you want this business to be? And your logo should match that. So that sounds great. What about marketing? Like, how have you found that journey?
Marketing's been challenging because when I started out, I absolutely loved at uni the diversity that osteopathy gives to what you do practice-wise. So as I said, newborns all the way through to my eldest client being 100. Where do you market that? Because that's general practice. But you can't say you treat everyone, because then you'll get no one, or you'll get people that come to you on a whim because you're an osteopath and they know you treat backs. We don't just treat backs, but that's what we often get, is you just treat back pain. So I've had to scope, as I've professionally developed over the years and what my specialist areas have become, I've had to market for that, but as we've expanded, market for team members too. And as a niche, we've, I guess, slowly fallen into a chronic pain condition-based clinic. We treat a lot of acute injuries as well, don't get me wrong, but the bulk of what we see, because my belief before becoming a team of therapists was very much set on preventative healthcare. If we can get you better to the point that we can give you a toolkit to prevent pain returning, we've done our job as therapists. It's about that added value to your session, that you're not going to keep coming back to see us because the same injury's returning. We need to give you a toolkit to make you stronger, fitter, better, and prevent it returning. So that then changed the angle, and that was probably 3 or 4 years ago that my marketing followed that line. Since then we've been steering a much better, where we've niched down a much better projection of growth in the business, which has been really interesting. And I almost would laugh before when people said, oh, you need to pick a niche, and I'd go, but what niche? Because we're so diverse in healthcare, and we work with so many people, and we see ankle pain and headaches and migraines and clients with endometriosis and all these different conditions. Most people that phone up and ask us if we've seen something that they've only recently been diagnosed with, but there's like 10 people that they've seen and no one's heard of it, and go, can you help with that? And we go, oh yeah, actually we can. We saw someone else with it. We've got some underpinning background and knowledge around that, but it won't be something that we see every day.
Would you recommend that then for people within your industry to niche down? I mean,
think
you said you wouldn't turn people away, but was that something you would advise if someone was just starting out?
Definitely earlier than I did. I definitely niched down in a way that, like, chronic pain's still a big category, a really big category, but niching down early enough that you set precedence on, you're an expert in that area. That's what you're good at treating. They're the clients that write you the best testimonials. And then that speaks for itself, because that becomes a marketing stream for your business, because you've got people that are screaming about the good work you've done and how you've transformed their life. Someone with acute pain or a like one-off injury, once they're better. Chronic pain people are living with pain day in, day out. But if you can change the way that they're living with pain and their experience of pain and give them a better quality of life, they're going to be talking about you for years to come.
Yeah, exactly. With your marketing and branding and everything like that, what would you say one of the biggest decisions you've had to make on your journey is?
The biggest decision on my journey with branding and marketing probably has to be, out of everything, I've tried most things, and a lot of it's been trial and error. And it's, how long do you trial that for? And some things have cost the business a lot of money because I've trialled it for too long, because I've got a bit too comfortable or taken my foot off the gas and got a bit distracted. I think the best thing that I've then implemented off the back of those learning experiences is picking something and setting a time frame in which I'm trialling it for.
Okay.
So when I've outsourced stuff, I trial it for like 12 weeks.
Okay.
If it's not working, it goes. It's not serving us, it goes. If it's going to cost us more.
Can you give me an example of what that would be?
So when I was on my own in the team and I was too busy to answer the phone, I outsourced my reception service.
Okay.
At the time, the business that I found to do my telephone answering, they were phenomenal. They understood healthcare. They understood what we did as osteopaths. They got it. And all their team members were put through quite a rigorous training process so that they acted like they were your team, like they were on site, and they were incredible. They then got bought out.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it didn't go as well.
Yeah.
And I sat too comfortably thinking, oh, it'd be okay for 6 months. And then I would get emails from clients going, no one's answering the phone. Is everything okay? The phone line's down.
Oh, wow.
And I contacted the client and I said, what's your experience been? And they'd phoned 3 or 4 times that day and not once had the phone been picked up. And that's when I went, I'm on maternity leave, but I need to take hold of the reins here and make something drastic happen.
Yeah.
So I started answering my own phone again, where it fits my setup now, where I just do the 2 days in work around the children. And actually, the phone calls I now have, most people, if not all, if they call for an appointment, we onboard them if they're a new client, because they can ask me the questions that a receptionist couldn't answer.
Yeah.
And that's transformed
the
way we work, because they're talking to me again.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one as well, because I see in forums that loads of osteopaths are now trialling AI reception. And it doesn't work for the way we are. We're a human service. The difficult questions come from our expertise. And if you can reassure someone and answer those on the phone, they're more likely to book in.
I do exactly the same. All the calls come through to me. So those more technical questions, I can answer them straight away rather than going, oh no, let me get back to you. And then they might call someone else in that time. So that's really interesting. Do you know many people that do that, or do they have reception teams, or how?
Most people have reception teams, or the way the setup has evolved is having virtual reception teams, particularly if you're a one-man band or you have a setup where you can't really have a reception. Or maybe from a financial perspective, it saves you money because you don't have loads of reception duties. People have gone that way, but from the way my bad experience led me to
really interesting.
Get back around to answering my own phone, because I did used to, but I couldn't answer all the voicemails in the breaks I had.
And you get to that point, don't you, within a business where it's like, am I doing the work or am I running the business, if that makes sense? And you do have to find that balance. If you're growing, okay, at what point do I only do X amount of projects or X amount of clients, and I need to focus on, oh no, I am the face of the business and I need to be answering the phone calls and pushing those effectively clients and leads through the business, because no one else, I strongly believe no one else can actually do it better than the business owner, because they're the ones that have the most passion about the business to succeed.
That's so true. And for us, as we've expanded and we have a team now of osteos that I have to grow and fill their lists, if someone phones and they tell me they've got knee pain, I have an osteo that's what they're passionate about treating. I can put them on their list directly. I can cater who I feel is the best fit.
Yeah.
But a receptionist that isn't in the business, that doesn't know the team, wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So we get a much better tailored service.
Yeah. And it's amazing you had to kind of go through that negative experience to then realise that. And I'm guessing you wouldn't change it now. You wouldn't.
Not at the moment. I think if I got to the point that I was in clinic more days, seeing more people, and for me to help more people, that's the thing I have to give up.
Yeah.
I'd have a receptionist that I bring in-house, and I train them. I'd get them to experience treatments from the different team members. I'd get them to do quite a lot of research around what we do, the things to say, and train them up in that respect, which you can't really do with an outsourced service.
Okay. And then finally, if you had one bit of advice for someone wanting to start their own clinic or start their own business, what would that be?
First and foremost, take the leap.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about it, there's normally something, like you were saying earlier, about being unhappy in what you are doing. And it doesn't have to be done quickly. Like, my journey's not been quick. It's been a gradual and letting go slowly, but I wish I'd let go a bit quicker. I think the thing that I neglected that would be the way that I navigate it now would be knowing those key performance indicators, knowing what's growing my business, so I can focus my energy in that instead of doing everything. Because I think early on you do everything, you try every avenue instead of focusing really hard on the bits that are actually growing the business and being time specific with that. That would be my one tip, is knowing those areas that are growing your business and focusing the energy there.
Thank you for joining us today on Love Local. If people want to find out more about your business, your website is
Laura Fishlock Osteopathy.co.uk,
and they can find you on Instagram at
Laura Fishlock Osteopathy.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Love Local. If you're a small business owner in Newbury or the surrounding area and you've got a story to tell, I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Thanks again for listening. I'm Jen, and I'll see you again on the next episode of Love Local.